you're always going to get that one person who's going to bust your balls. Okay. So what I try and do is I turn it around. Yeah. Okay. So, and then not pick on them, but that person who's busting your balls, you try and bring them in. Yeah. And say,
Yeah.
look, if you think it's that piece of shit, why don't you use it?
Right.
Okay. And then they're,
Welcome to Manufacturing Insiders. Today I have Chris Drew with me. Chris is a man that is very passionate about rail. The company that he founded in North America, at least the North America version of it, is really focused on providing equipment for the rail industry. And so we're going to have an interesting conversation today just about really the lack of adoption of rail in the U.S., the potentials for it, and the impact that it has on manufacturing. Logistics is a big part of manufacturing, as we all know. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the manufacturing process, how they're actually making these products, and some of the issues that they're having with tariffs. So welcome to Manufacturing Insiders, Chris.
glad to be here, Nate. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. And I forgot to mention that you have an awesome accent as well. So, and we were talking about before how it's had a positive impact on your sales ability in the U.S. here. Yeah.
But it's funny you say that. I came over to the States back in February 1999, so I've been here for a very long time. Obviously, my wife and two children came over. My daughter was only 6 months old, and my son was 4 years old. So yeah, I mean, we've literally lived the American dream. You know, we came over with an L1, L2 visas, then we got our green cards. And then after about 8 or 9 years of being in the States, we decided to become American citizens. So, yeah, so it's all been very positive. But yeah, to your point, the accent definitely helps to open the door, as they say.
Sure. Yeah, I know that there's research out there. I can't remember where I saw it originally, but the reason why the Geico character has an English accent is because actually, it increases the perception of trust in Americans for some reason. I don't know why we trust you guys.
Well, I think the majority of Americans came from Europe. Yeah, everyone in America likes to think they've got some sort of connection to Europe. Yeah,
Sure.
and I also think that the British sense of humour is totally different to the American sense of humour, and sometimes people get very surprised what comes out of my mouth. Okay.
How would you characterize the difference between the British sense of humor? Like, how would you summarize that?
Well, I think certainly the type of industry I've been mainly involved in, it's a lot of like nitpicking. What we say in England, taking the Mickey out of people, and just basically just trying to break down that barrier. I'm not here just to sell you something. I'm here to be a friend, a partner, and someone we can work with. And I think the quicker in any type of sales you can break that barrier with the prospective customer, the better it is for both parties.
Right. So you're kind of giving them a hard time a little bit, hassling them a little bit, just kind of creating some rapport through that sort of,
Yeah.
I don't know,
Okay.
jockish.
No, I won't use the word, but busting their
Yeah, gotcha.
what. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay.
No,
And
I
I
like
just
it.
think it just helps break the ice. We're all human beings at the end of the day.
Right.
We've all got a job to do. And I just think, I mean, you mentioned that how passionate I am within my industry. I think I've always been a passionate guy because I enjoy meeting people, and I just enjoy doing what I'm doing. So I think that's half the battle. If you actually enjoy what you do, it isn't a job. It just becomes more of your life.
Right. What do you love the most about your job?
But obviously meeting various people all over the world, certainly all over North America, and just being able to help people, like support them, because we're not double glazing salesmen, if I can use that term. the type of customers, the type of products we sell, basically they need to provide a good service. So I think, we're able to bring to the industry the latest technology. Obviously, we keep a various stock of spare parts, infantry back in our warehouse here. And I just think it's just been part of the whole industry. I'm not saying without ROBEL, without Chris Drew, there wouldn't be an industry, but I like to think that we do play a major part within the industry to make it safe and secure and more reliable.
So what sort of products do you sell? Like how do you fit into the industry exactly?
Oh, right. So with ROBEL, we basically sell any type of equipment that's used to either build or maintain the railway. And that could be from anything from a $20-30 drill bit to, a 10-15 million dollar train and all in between. We were one of the first companies to introduce battery platform into what I call the small tool market. So we offer a complete range of battery operated railway equipment. We are probably the only real serious player in that industry because we commit a lot of financial research resources into R&D, and we offer our own ROBEL battery platform that's purposely designed for the rail industry, where a lot of our competitors, they just use what we call a commercial battery off the shelf, and they've basically just adapted various bits of equipment to use these commercial batteries within the rail industry. But obviously with ROBEL, believe it or not, we are a company that's been established for over 150 years. Our main focus is purely railway. So, we've got an awful lot of experience, and I think we obviously understand what the customer needs and wants.
Right. Yeah, and I can definitely see the use case for battery operated. You're often going to be pretty far away from an outlet.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, we've had some of these conversations on the podcast with some innovators in the battery space. And there's a lot of cool things going on there. Some of the guys I've talked to are developing some new anode materials that include silicon as opposed to just the traditional sort of carbon lattice structure. I don't know if you know anything about that.
Well, you actually talked about the actual makeup of the battery itself.
Right. Yeah, because you have high demand equipment. You need to. It's got to last a long time. It's got to be able to produce the power that's needed. So I would imagine there's some innovation in the batteries on your side.
Well, look, within reason, there's only two major cell manufacturers in the world. Okay, when you talk about lithium-ion batteries, what we've done, we've obviously encapsulated our batteries into an aluminum case. So again, unlike a commercial type battery, that where it's more of a nylon plastic base surrounding, our battery, you can literally throw it from a high height, and it doesn't get damaged, because obviously that's the other concern about the battery technology, and certainly with lithium-ion batteries, the risk of damaging the cells that then obviously incorporate the possibility of the battery self-igniting. And again, going back to what I've said about our focus is purely 100% on the rail industry, we understand that the equipment gets abused, it gets thrown in the back of the trucks, it gets thrown out, when they start using the equipment within the rail environment with the ballast, etc. So, we've been able to make our batteries more robust with that in mind, with regards to the longevity of the battery, and obviously not basically causing any risk of fire due to the actual cells being damaged. So, a lot of people look at battery technology. Everyone now has a lithium-ion battery. The railroad industry is very unique. It's very specialized. And I think that we've got it right, okay?
Mm-hmm. So I can imagine there's there's a huge difference between the use of rail in the US and the use of rail in Europe. And so I can imagine that you heading up the operation here in North America, you probably came across some interesting use cases, needs for new products that maybe weren't necessary beforehand. I mean, one of the things that I researched was we move a lot more freight than any other country, but at the same time we have some pretty big limitations as far as like um, moving people from A to B. We don't do as much of that, right?
Americans love cars. Okay.
Yeah.
I think obviously with regards to the technology in Europe, we carry more passenger freight
Yeah.
rather than freight. Yeah.
Right.
So therefore, a little bit like a Swiss watch. If the train leaves at 9 o'clock in the morning and it's scheduled to get there at 10:05, yeah, within reason, it has to get there. Okay. So there's a lot more emphasis in Europe put on technology that enables the trains and the track and everything that's involved in the rail industry to make it more reliable. Okay. And certainly, over the 20 plus years I've been in America, I've seen a lot more European companies try and break into the market because obviously there is more and more emphasis in making your rail system or our rail system more reliable. But to your point, obviously there's a lot more money spent within the freight railroads than there are on the passenger transit side. The majority of the passenger transit sides are either subsidised by local states or obviously the federal government. The ticket revenue doesn't necessarily pay for the complete service. So
Right.
without that extra income coming in, you wouldn't have any railways or public transportation style railroads, yeah, in
Right.
America. Where
Right.
obviously in Europe, it's a whole different kettle of fish. The governments know that they have to, behind the scenes, fund the railways, and that's what they do. I think with our new administration that they're looking more for private investors, which is a good thing within the public transportation. So hopefully there will be a lot more money spent within the public transportation system. But again, rather than that coming directly from the feds, that may come from private money.
Right. Yeah, and then it's got to have a return on investment. I wonder if there's like mixed use cases, So say you put in a network of high-speed rail on the eastern seaboard, and at the same time you eliminate the US Postal Service. So any revenue that the US Postal Service was making would then go into this rail system. That's how you're moving packages and letters and things of that nature. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a weird idea I had.
Right. Well, I mean, I used to like seeing an old-fashioned milkman go around. Yeah. Times have changed. Yeah. I still like having my mail delivered, to my mailbox outside where I live. Yeah.
Right.
I, Look, I just think in America, obviously the high speed subject has been discussed over many, many, many years. Okay. There are 3 or 4 projects that are actually on the table as we speak. Okay. None of them have really got going yet. Yeah. I think that one of the major projects that hopefully will start in the next year or two will be from LA to Vegas. Okay. And I'm pretty sure that once America has what I call a proper high speed rail network, or at least one system, hopefully people will then see the advantage and the benefit, and there'll be a lot more to come. But I think, like everything, the hardest thing to do is to get the first one up and running.
Right. What is the best, and I'm sure I could research this, but I always have this argument with, like, I have a cousins, I have all my cousins, we talk about different things that are going on in the world, whatever, on our group text, and I'll say something like, I wonder about this. And one of my cousins will send like a chat GPT answer. And I'm like, that's not what I was trying to do. I was trying to like converse and like think about things. But at any rate, I wonder what the best system is. I would assume you have an opinion on this. And like I've thought about like what's the most efficient way to send freight or passengers from point A to point B. Like, and I know that they've done a lot of innovations in Japan, China, in Europe in general. Like, what's the best system? How does it work? Is it maglev or?
Well, look, everyone talks about, the high speed, the special underground tunnel that you can get sucked through at, a
Yeah.
1,000 miles an hour. They talk
Yep.
about high mag technology. I mean, all of that has, been investigated. Okay. But obviously there's a huge cost implication.
Right.
So, with regards to the most cost effective way, okay, it would have to be an electrified rail system that's predominantly used all over Europe. So, if you talk to like young college Americans who have actually, once they graduate, they do their wonderful European trip. Yeah, a lot of them take the European rail network to get it all the way across Europe. Yeah, and they all come back, with great, satisfaction, how reliable the system is, how inexpensive it is. So, hopefully with the new generation coming in and, with regards to concerns of the environment, pollution and all that good stuff, hopefully there'll be a lot more young people in North America who want to see more high speed type rail. Yeah. But I
Right.
think, I mean, to your point, that obviously in Europe, what tends to happen is that the networks during the day are used by passenger freight, okay, or passenger people. And then obviously come after a certain hour, those same railway lines are used by the freight companies, where in the US, you tend to have more designated freight track
Right.
compared to, if you like, passenger track. Yeah. So
Right.
if you look at Amtrak, the majority of their track isn't owned by Amtrak. It's owned by other types of railroads that could be SEPTA in Pennsylvania. A lot of it could be the Class 1 railroads. So again, depending on the actual type of track and where it is, there are speed restrictions. So that's why you can't have a high speed train, for argument's sake, running on your existing line from the
Mm,
east coast to the west because the infrastructure just isn't there for that.
I see. So it'd be a very expensive project. Yeah, and like US, we're a lot more spread out than Europe. And I can only imagine what the cost of that infrastructure would be. It seems like you'd have to really focus it on, highly congested population centers, from New York City to New Jersey to, or from, like you said, LA to Las Vegas, those sorts of things.
Look, I mean, how I see it, I see America loves what I call the grid system. Okay, so I can see like a high speed rail link from, say, on the east coast, let's just say Boston all the way down to Washington. So then you've got the east coast line. Then obviously, let's just say from Florida across out west, and then I don't know, San Diego, LA, up to San Fran. Yeah, so you slowly build your box, okay, and then once you've got that box, then you can literally do your grid system and connect it all up into the middle. And that's
Right.
basically what happened, when the railways first started. You had like 40 to 50 different independent railways all the way across America. You've got, not so much now, but you've got over 40 different types of rail track sizes because each guy who owned a railroad didn't want the guy next to him pinching his rail track. So they all had different styles of rail. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And then obviously eventually those smaller companies got brought out by the bigger companies. and now you've got, within reason, you've got your 4 or 5 major Class 1 railroads, okay? And I don't know if anyone's noticed, but now the talk is that Union Pacific are now in talks with Norfolk Southern, and they are looking to buy the Norfolk Southern Railroad, which is another Class 1 railroad. So that would be, if that does go through, that would be the first railway company that connects east to west.
Wow.
So
Yeah, I mean,
things are slowly happening.
right, right. Have you ever, the everything I know about railroads came from a book called Atlas Shrugged. Did you ever read that? No?
No.
Great
I've
book.
learned everything on the railway by being out in the field and talking to the people who know what they're talking about. And
This
there's
book,
no real book about the railway industry. I mean,
sure.
there's a limited amount of colleges that now offer degrees in railway. Okay,
Hmm.
but it's such an old-fashioned industry.
Yeah,
The only real way to learn is by being out there and just doing it.
yep, yep. No, yeah, the book isn't explicitly about railroads. The main character runs a railroad company, but it's actually a book about socialism. It's by somebody named Anne Rand.
Right.
And it's actually, speaking of college students learning about railroads, they should all read this book. But great book. It's
I have to
it
look that up then.
yeah, it's amazing because it paints this perfect picture of the implications of socialism. And essentially, it's all the struggles that this capitalist running this railroad went through, and how you would eventually get these people, these grifters, trying to siphon off revenue and trying to make everything public, etc. And it was a great way to kind of wrap your head around the actual implications of socialism.
Right.
But at any rate, I know probably 90% of the audience of this podcast would be on the same page with me, but sorry about the remaining 10%. But so you have been really successful in this space, and I'm curious to know what do you think allowed you to gain that level of success? What has really been your biggest, I guess, character asset that has allowed you to really thrive in this business?
Well, I think that they always say a good salesman listens.
Mm.
Yeah, a good boss listens. Okay, I just I think I've just been very fortunate in how I actually ended up in the industry. I used to, when I was a young wee lad in my early 20s, I worked for Hilti back in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was given the Channel Tunnel when they built the tunnel from England to France. So that's how I really first got involved in the rail industry. Yeah. And then I left that company and worked for an Italian company that had some very niche railway products. I was able to introduce those products for the Italian company, not just in the UK, but right across Europe. That's what brought me to America. Okay. And then I set up that company, back in 1999. And now, in 2019, I set up ROBEL North America. I get asked this question all the time. Why is it you're successful and perhaps other people aren't? I don't think there's any real honest answer to that. Okay. I just think, we're all individuals. Okay. Um, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I mean, I just pride myself in what I do. I
Mm-hmm.
say what I do, okay? And I think a lot of people respect that. My father had his own business, okay? So I obviously learned a lot from him.
Yeah.
And I'm just a nice guy. If that makes any sense, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm no different to you. I'm no different to I never went to college. I left school when I was 16. I worked my way up through the ranks. Technology wise, I can turn a computer on, I can turn my iPhone on, but anything more than that, I've got my younger staff who help me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think it's down to the individual. And I think the other thing is that too many people want to be something they're never going to be. Okay. I mean, I've always said this in life, that you've got to look yourself in the mirror and be happy with what you see. I mean, of course, we all want to be millionaires, billionaires, and all the rest of it. Yeah. But I do think in this crazy modern world, with all these, Instagrams and influencers, and it just paints this crazy picture that it's so easy to make lots and lots of money. It's not easy, okay? And I think, as soon as people realize that, and you've got to be focused on what you do, and obviously compassionate in what you do, I suppose there's luck to that with regards to finding your right fit in life. But no, I mean, I'm no different to you or anyone. Okay, hard work. I'm living proof that the American dream still exists. I've set up two successful companies now in America. So yeah, I mean, I would just say to people, just be yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're probably selling yourself a little short in terms of exceptionalism, because there's a lot of, well, you're absolutely right that not everybody should or could embody this ideal that they have in their mind, what they, the amount of money they want to make, the industry they want to be in. So that's absolutely true. But then there's also, the aspect of a lot of people out there can come up with an idea to do something, but the actual delivering on that idea and actually taking the steps necessary and putting the work to do it is pretty rare. I mean, there's tons of people, even people I know, that work a job, 9 to 5. They're overall fairly miserable with their lives. And they say, oh, I'd love to start this business. I love to do this, love to do that. But they're never going to do it. They're never going to take that step. You have to have some of that. You have to have a little bit of a willingness to accept risks and willingness to take a chance on things. But then that also goes back to what you said about liking the person you see in the mirror. You have to trust yourself. You have to trust that you're going to be able to deliver on that, at least to some degree. Obviously, we don't know anything for sure. So, I mean, I think you have a lot of assets that have led to your success. And obviously, the accent's great too. And, being a nice guy is one thing. But I think I loved your advice about like busting people's balls a little bit, because
I can say that, yeah. I'm good at busting people's balls. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because what that does, because I want to kind of like discuss that a little bit further. What that actually does, if you're willing to do that with a prospective customer, is it exudes confidence, and it says, "I know I have a good product, and I'm so confident that I can bust your balls a little bit. Like, I still expect you to buy it, right?"
Look, you're always going to get the awkward customer. Yeah. Okay. I mean, look, traditionally, when we do a demonstration, there could be one or two people, there could be 30 people at the demonstration. Yeah. You're always going to get that one person who's going to bust your balls. Okay. So what I try and do is I turn it around. Yeah. Okay. So, and then not pick on them, but that person who's busting your balls, you try and bring them in, yeah, and say,
Yeah.
look, if you think it's that piece of shit, why don't you use it?
Right.
Okay. And then they're then they're all in front of all their mates and work colleagues, and then they forget how to turn it on, or they forget to pull the lever, or whatever it may be. Yeah.
Right.
So you actually in a funny way, you turn it on to them. Yeah.
Right. You win
Okay.
everybody over by winning them
Yeah.
over.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying about just being yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think, look, again, if you know you've got a good product, yeah, that's half the battle.
Right.
Okay.
Right. How many companies out there are selling, or would you consider to be competitors that you go up against in bids?
Look, like everything, loads. There's loads of competitors. Okay. And don't forget, it's a huge industry, but it's a small industry. So all the competitors, everyone knows what everyone's doing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But like I said, I just look, no matter unless you come up with a very unique product, yeah, you're always going to have competitors. We had a sales guy that automatically out of the gate thought that we were too expensive. Okay. So as soon as he got out of the truck and went to see a customer, that was already in his mind. Okay. So
Right.
it was obvious he would never sell anything. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So, I just think it just depends on how you represent the brand. Okay. I do believe a lot in the brand. Yeah. I stick up for the brand, not just in America, but globally. Uh, and, if you've luckily you've got to have compassion. I mean, we have, I don't know, there's probably 15, 20 competitors if you look at the whole market. Yeah. Okay. But we're all selling the same types of products. Yeah. Um, why are we different? There's lots of reasons why we're different. Yeah. I still believe that people buy off people.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We have a rail drill that drills a hole in the rail. There's probably 8 or 9 competitors that do exactly the same. You know, have we got 100% of the market? No. Are we happy with the market share we've got? Yeah. Okay. And I think that's the other thing. You've also got to be realistic that you can't, as much as everyone wants to try and get every bit of business, you can't have it all. Okay. And I think, again, if you start small, you pick on the product that people really enjoy using. And then over, 6 months, 12 months, over 2 or 3 years, you eventually bring the whole portfolio into that particular company. But I think, to turn around and say out of the gate, we're going to sell everything to whoever. I mean, you're just pipe dreaming. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And again, going back to your point, that there's always going to be people for whatever reason don't want to deal with you. I'd much rather focus on the people who I want to deal with and they want to deal with me than the other
Right.
people who don't really give a hoot.
Right.
And I think
Right.
a lot of people, you can waste your time on what we would call time wasters just to try and prove a point. Let the competition get on with those sort of people. I'd much rather, and I often say this, and I don't think it's wrong in saying this, I'd much rather deal with people I want to deal with than people I don't want to deal with.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah. Yep. No, I say the same thing. And that's sometimes my wife or my employees be like, Nate, you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't say that to them. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, I want to work with people that I like and that we
Yeah.
have kind of a common
Yeah.
worldview.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah, but again, keep going back to that point. Why are people more accessible than other people? And I'm a strong believer in this, is because the successful people like what they do.
Yeah, I think that's right.
That's
Yeah.
it. Be it the product, even the people you do. I've got some phenomenal relationships with customers all over the world. Okay, and it makes you feel good. If they want something, they phone you rather than someone else.
Yeah. Yeah, the relationship is very important. Is that so? Is the kind of that direct sales approach, outside sales staff, kind of your main way of building the business?
We do have distributors. Okay,
Okay.
we've tried with several distributors in America. Okay, some of them have worked, some of them haven't. Okay, our philosophy is we're the manufacturer. The only real way in which we can get what I call proper market customer feedback is with our products, with our personal direct salespeople interacting with our customers.
Right. So you don't just hand the product to the distributor and say, go to town.
No.
You're actually having your guys on
Yeah.
location over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And look again, it's so specialized. I mean, if we had thousands and thousands of different products, that would be obviously there's certain industries, there's certain types of manufacturing that where you need distributors. Yeah. Okay. The rail industry, of course, it has distributors. Yeah. But I think certainly with the Rebel Group, okay, we have our own companies scattered around the world, okay? And obviously, those Rebel owned companies have their own direct salespeople. And then in certain countries, we have agents or distributors, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But again, what we try and do, at least every 2 or 3 times a year, we bring those distributors back to our main facilities in Europe. And then we have what we call a Rebel Open Day. And everyone's there for 3 or 4 days, looking at the new product, talking about the old product, talking about the customers, what we're good at, what we're not good at. And hopefully, we continue to improve. Okay. But ultimately, it's the customer that buys. So if you haven't got a good brand, you haven't got a good product, you haven't got a good relationship, you might let them down on delivery. It could be for many, many reasons. Yeah. So the more you understand the customer, the better it is for everyone.
Right. Right. Yeah. I definitely think that's the important thing. And I mean, having your people on site, interacting with them, not just kind of relying on that distribution channel, allows you to get that customer relationship built and to understand what the real problems are.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the biggest challenge that you guys are facing right now?
Oh, but obviously the tariff hasn't helped.
Yeah.
Okay.
How is
Uh,
that affecting you?
Look, I understand I understand why it was done, and I'm in full agreement to it. Okay, I don't think the messaging was done correctly. Okay,
Right.
because a lot of our products anyway already had tariffs on them. Okay, but the average, and again, I don't mean it's any disrespectful way, the average American wouldn't even know that. Yeah, but I do feel that it's unfair that America would allow other countries to import product with zero tariff, and then within reason that same product going back from an American manufacturer back into say Europe or somewhere, there would be a tariff. I do think that was wrong. Okay,
Right.
yeah, and I fully understand why this administration's done what it's done. But obviously, for the last 6, 7 months, what that's done, we never knew if it was going to be 5%, 10%, 15%, 50%. It was changing every other day. Yeah.
Right.
I think obviously now, we know, well, hopefully we know that the tariff's 15% with regards to anything we bring in from Europe. Okay. Anything we bring in from the UK, I think it's 10%. So at least now we know. Whether or not that's going to change, I honestly don't know. But at least, I'm 80% sure it's going to stick, which is fine by us. Yeah. There's certain products that where we as a manufacturer can absorb some of it, not all of it. Yeah. And then there's
Hmm.
other products that where, we have to pass that full 15, whatever percent onto the end user. Okay.
Right.
Um, there aren't that many US manufacturers in our market space.
Right.
Okay.
Which is good for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously if you've got.
Yeah.
And have you guys looked at, I think you told me you have you guys started to look at ramping up some manufacturing in the US for these
Look,
products?
we manufacture one of our tools in the US. Okay. But again, it's all down to volume. Yeah. And I
Hmm.
think, again, it's all very well whoever's saying, oh, just build a factory and, start manufacturing in the US. Yeah. as I keep alluding to, the rail industry is, even though it's a huge industry, it's a very niche industry. Okay.
Right.
So, if you're talking about railway tools, you can't compare how many railway tools we sell compared to, say, a construction tool company, like Hilti or Milwaukee or Makita or whoever. I mean, the numbers are just so different. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, look, we are looking at manufacturing because we have so many different parts of our group. Okay. There could be a possibility, not now, but in the future, that where ROBEL North America does have its own, what I call, proper manufacturing plant, but not yet. Okay.
Right.
We're working on what we call the on-track machines. So we have other machines that actually ride the track. So they're big machines, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That there's a possibility for us to enter that market space more. If we do that, then obviously you've got Buy America that comes into play. So that would make it more interesting for us to set up a factory in the US.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. You know, I forgot I was going to mention this. So my next podcast is with a guy that started a company called Glidtech, Glidtech, and he has created this rail to road system. So basically, they're making vehicles that you can drive on and off the track. Like if you get to an obstruction in the middle of a railway or a rail line, you just drive around it and get back on the track. It also facilitates getting the stuff to the warehouse after the fact. But it's pretty freaking cool, I thought.
Well, look, I mean, believe it or not, what in the rail industry we call that high rail. Okay. So, if you look at like your traditional F-150 truck, you look at
Mm-hmm.
other bigger vehicles, yeah, that there are systems available which are installed on regular, if you like, highway type vehicles that
Yep.
enable you to drive those vehicles on the actual track itself.
Yep.
So that's already there, yeah.
Yeah.
We introduced what we call the Romy Tamp, which is one of the smallest rail on track tamping machines. Okay.
Mm.
And one of the biggest problems any railroad or contractor would have is getting the actual tamping machine on and off the track. They may have to like rent big cranes to lift them off, or they have to go to a special facility which enables them to unload, deliver it onto the rail and then take it to the actual workplace. We came up with the concept that where we have like a big hydraulic cylinders with rubber wheels, that where the cylinders lower down and remote control wise, you literally drive the tamper off the gooseneck trailer onto the actual rail track. Okay. But
Yeah.
like everything, there's a cost implication to that, yeah. And
Yeah.
it all goes down to the almighty dollar. Are the customers prepared to pay an extra whatever for that extra benefit?
Right. Yeah. Depends on if they have a crane on hand or not.
Yeah, or they've got, that they can afford the extra whatever it's going to cost. Okay?
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah. But that's not, again, with the industry, we've got our own AI department, our own robotic department. So we're already thinking 5-10 years ahead. Okay. But again, as a manufacturer, a company that's committed to the industry, it's all very well us like developing these products, but ultimately the customers have to pay the money for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Some people can see the advantages, other people can't.
Mm-hmm. But one other question on the tariff. So is there an opportunity to do like the assembly or some part of the value added in the manufacturing process in the U.S.
Yeah.
To eliminate? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that eliminates the tariffs or it eliminates a portion of the
Yeah.
tariffs or how that works.
Yeah. Look, there's always ways around whatever. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, you can have parts shipped in, you can then assemble them. Yeah. That would obviously have an impact with regards to the overall cost of the product. Yeah.
Hmm.
But again, I mean, if we've got a product that where we're selling thousands of, yeah, then obviously it's worthwhile investigating that, yeah.
Right.
But I keep alluding, with our industry, even though it's a big industry, the numbers when you compare them to other industries are significantly smaller. So it
Right.
does, as a manufacturer, it makes it difficult to say, right, we're going to, start manufacturing it in North America. If you look,
Right.
most of our products are manufactured in Germany, okay, and they get shipped all over the world.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, that does make sense. It's a low volume. It's a low volume deal, so it's
yeah.
going to be tough to justify unless you can, assemble, a whole suite of products. You know, yeah, I definitely get the challenge. But I mean, if you're having the challenge, everybody's having the challenge in your space,
I'm
unless
sure,
they were already set
exactly.
up in the U.S.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. And it's all over the world. Yeah, okay.
right,
Mhm.
yeah,
And again, you never know. It's such a precarious industry. You can't basically turn around and say, within reason, every year you're going to sell so many of these, so many. 'Cause it changes all the time. Yeah,
hmm,
we have different seasons. Different seasons they do different types of work. So yeah, it keeps it exciting.
yeah, I bet. Well, I mean, I think you've given us a lot of good advice and a lot of good things to think about. I know some of the challenges that you're facing are similar to what other companies are facing. My last question for you is, if someone in the audience is listening and they could have a resource or some knowledge or a capability that you've been looking for, is there anything that you've been looking for, any problems you've been trying to solve?
Every day. Every day there's a problem. Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah. I'm open to discussion, and I actually sit on our local chamber of commerce. Yeah.
Okay.
All
Yeah.
right. So yeah. I mean, look. Running a company's never. It hasn't been easy since day one. It will never
Yep.
be easy. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Employing people is a bloody nightmare. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
People over expect, under deliver. I mean, I think anyone watching this will probably agree with me. That's the biggest challenge, finding the right people.
Hmm.
Okay. And not just that, the actual cost of employing people in the US, with the healthcare, all the
Yep.
various other types of benefits, etc. And obviously that cost one has to pass on through the product. Okay. So when someone turns around and says, "Oh, I can't believe that your product is that much more expensive compared to competitors," there might be we're probably paying our people a lot more money. Yeah. They probably have a lot more benefits than other companies offer. Yeah. They all drive around in nice, brand new trucks. There's a cost to it. Yeah.
Hmm.
So look, I'm open to any suggestions. Okay.
So is that something you're looking for? I mean, if somebody was looking for a position, are is there a specific one you're trying to fill or anything like that?
Look, we're an expanding company. We've just taken on 2 extra salespeople already this year. We're looking to take on more people, but again, depending where they're situated, yeah, I mean, I'm always open. Okay, and just for the record, these 2 people we've just taken on have no railway experience whatsoever.
You can train them up the right way then.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, look, again, the industry's changing. Okay. So, it's like me. I mean, I've been I'm 61 years old. Um, you know, I like seeing new people come into the industry. Okay.
Right.
And I think, when we bring in people from different industries, obviously they've got to have some sort of selling background to a degree. Yeah. Okay. But it's interesting to see the questions they ask, when they go and visit the customers. That's another thing about the rail industry. A lot of the people who work in the industry are very proud of what they do. So if you ask them a question, they're more than happy to give you an answer because it
Right.
makes them feel good. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I mean, if anyone's interested, please get in contact with us.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for coming on today, Chris. I enjoyed chatting with you, and I wish you all the luck in the world. And I know you have more going for you than just luck, so I'm sure you'll be successful and continue to be so.
Look, I'll leave on this note that you can see there's a Formula One car. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's my passion. I love watching Formula One. It's a bit boring at the moment, but what really gets me is the teamwork. Okay. If you look at all the successful F1 teams, they all work together. So, and I think that's just like a regular company, even, with your life, with your married life or girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it may be. If we all work as a team, you actually end up achieving something.
That's right.
Yeah.
Good advice.
You're welcome. And I didn't bust your balls.
That's true. You didn't.
No. Perhaps next time I might bust your balls.
You'll have to do it later. All right. Thanks a lot, Chris.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Nate. Bye.
Yep.